Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Bundle Your Ransomware Defenses with Arcserve, brought to you by Arcserve. I'm your host, Katie Bavoso from the Channel Company. The severity of ransomware attacks is becoming worse as attacks become more targeted and attackers cast wider nets. In 2020, victims in the U.S. spent an average of $2.09 million on remediation costs related to ransomware attacks. And that's only the financial loss. It's not a matter of if your customers get hit with a ransomware attack, but when. Do they have the right tools to not only defend themselves against an attack, but save their critical data from being lost? That's what we'll be discussing today. I'm now joined by Stacy Budd, Principal Consultant of Presales at Arcserve. Welcome, Stacy. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for being here. Let's jump right into our first segment. What's at risk? So, Stacy, let's first start by identifying the threat. What are the risks of a ransomware attack aside from paying the ransom?
Well, I think the primary risk is reputation, right? Your name gets out that you were hit by a ransomware attack. That's always going to hurt your brand from that perspective. Tied to that, of course, is loss of data, the downtime of those systems. Customers are probably going to be going somewhere else to get that either information or service or whatever during that time. So we need to actually be able to get up those systems quickly and be able to recover from them quickly, do disaster recovery and those kind of things. So really it relays and ties back to, of course, how quickly can you do that?
Stacy, what defenses do businesses need in place to protect themselves from a ransomware attack and handle one if they do end up getting hit? And do these tools normally come packaged together?
First, defense that a company has is really education, right? So educating your users on best practices, on all those kind of things. But the challenge is that we as users, as well as we get educated, something looks like we should do it, so we do it, or we tend to just miss something, right? So it's always going to slip through, unfortunately. So then you need to go back to, what tools can you rely on to help you from that. And the next tool, of course, is the tool that's going to help, protect your endpoints and protect your data from that perspective. And even at that, sometimes, right, things go through and slip through the cracks or something like that. Maybe it's not updated correctly, or in some cases we've seen, that, some devices are not protected and they get missed, those kind of things, all different kind of reasons why. So you really need to then be able to rely on a tool to be able to, of course, after you've relied on, all the other steps, now something still gets through, you need to be able to recover that data, right? You need to be able to get those systems up quickly from an RTO perspective, right? The time it takes to recover those systems. And we're really seeing like disaster recovery and having that plan in place and having that solution in place to be able to spin up systems, access those systems quickly. And really later on, you can worry about data restoration and those kind of things, but really being able to perform that disaster recovery is a big part of it. From an education standpoint and an endpoint standpoint and protection standpoint, a lot of times, those are going to be different kind of approaches that you take and different solutions. But from the recovery standpoint, being able to recover that data, at least with Arcserve, right, we're going to position a solution that helps you not only recover your data, also protect your backed up data, right, your protected data from that perspective as well, and then also be able to do that disaster recovery perspective. So we're providing that one solution to meet those needs. Yes.
And we're going to talk more about those solutions right now. That brings us into segment 2, a multi-layered defense. Stacy, what is the Arcserve 9000 Appliance Series and the Arcserve Appliances X Series? And how do they defend customers against ransomware attacks?
Sure. So I like to think of this as kind of the last line of defense, right? This is where we're going to take that, critical data and have that data located, from an easy to access kind of perspective, right? So I'm going to be able to take my data, back it up to these devices. The advantage to it being either the 9000 series or the X series, right? These really scalability. right? From that perspective, we range anywhere from a 4 terabyte box up to a petabyte and a half from that perspective. So when you take a look at this, right, these can not only be, destinations that you're going to back up to, but they can also be boxes and devices that are used for disaster recovery, spin up systems directly on those and provide that capability, that last line of defense. Hey, let's get those systems back up and running quickly before we even need to worry about recovery and those kind of things.
Stacy, what makes up the Appliance Series first and last lines of defense? And what is the true differentiator of this multi-layer protection approach?
Great question. So when we start with, with what we do a little bit different than the rest of the market out there is our partnership with Sophos, right? Running a Sophos Intercept X on the device itself, providing that proactive protection of the appliance, giving you the ability not only to protect the device, but it's proactively doing it. It's out there watching for things to happen, scanning things as far as that goes, so that device will not be subject to an attack, right? And can be stopped at that point. And then on top of that, we're adding on, the automated disaster recovery capabilities, automated testing within that as well, the ability to spin up the workloads directly on the appliances and be able to do that too.
So how quickly can the Appliance Series solutions be installed and set up? And how well do they integrate with the customer's existing environments?
So, I mean, that's always something we like to say, hey, we can deploy appliance out in just a very short amount of time. It's always going to be dependent on the customer environment, right? The more complex, the more security on the environment, right, can affect this. But typically what I see is, I mean, we get these appliances deployed in an up and running and protecting an environment in a very, very short amount of time. It of course scales with the customer environment, but yeah, definitely, usually within an hour, I'm already performing the first line of backups, the first protection of the data as far as that goes. Sometimes quicker than that.
So with that said, Stacy, how scalable is the Appliance Series and what value does that create for your reseller partners?
From scalability, we fall back to that 4 terabyte to petabyte and a half range. Right. So from a perspective of those boxes and the value that they add to the reseller is really, I don't need to go back into my customer if they outgrow the device and talk to them about, hey, let's sell you a new device, right? Often what we can do is we can go and we can add additional storage to those boxes and grow those boxes without necessarily replacing them. So giving you that flexibility becomes a much better conversation, not only for us as the vendor, right, but also for the reseller that was their value added reseller that's adding a value. They can go in and say, look, we know that, either I've got a couple different scenarios, right, where we have, a customer that maybe budget wise today they can afford a certain size device, but they know they're going to be growing, they know they're going to outgrow this box in maybe a year, 2 years, but they do have the option to go ahead and grow that box and grow with them.
Very valuable in that perspective for sure. Thank you, Stacy. That brings us right into segment 3, the Arcserve differentiator. So now we get to talk more specifically about Arcserve. How do these Appliance Series solutions stack up against competing data protection solutions from other vendors?
Well, I mean, when we very first start to talk about that scalability that I just mentioned, right, that ability to grow the device, I don't know of many vendors on the market that are offering that. Usually, when you look at an appliance from a competitive vendor, they're really talking to their customers about, okay, if you outgrow this, let's now come in and sell you a new appliance, or let's reduce your retention, right, that you're keeping on site and move that to cloud. Let's fudge the retention numbers, which can be good, but it can also be bad, right? So if you need to pull your restore data back down from the cloud, right, that may, depending on the amount of data, right, in a pinch, that may take some time. The other main differentiator that we have is the way that we use the data, right? The way that we back up the data and work with that data. The fact that we manage, source side global deduplication, right? We're going to not require a landing zone for the data before the deduplication process. This means that when we have a box that we put in a customer site, we can use the storage that's on that box for the actual storage storage of the backups, we don't have to set aside a portion of it, often half of it, right, for the actual landing of the data to then be processed and deduplicated. This means that a lot of times when we go into an opportunity, we may go into a competitive opportunity and we're actually offering a smaller device that's going to hold more data than our competitor is.
Where is the opportunity for your reseller partners in selling Arcserve Appliance Series solutions?
So we got a couple different opportunities, right? Here, number one, we're giving, the option to come in and have a bundled solution, as opposed to some solutions out there where, you're buying the software, then you're buying the hardware to run the software, and then you're buying the storage, right? As far as that goes. And it may be what I call intelligent storage that can do deduplication and those kind of things, right? With us, it's all packaged together from that perspective. Now, we're not the only one that packages the solution all together like that, but it does make it much easier to position that in those cases. And then, also when we take a look at, similar vendors, right, that are, in the space that do offer the pre-packaged kind of solution like we have, or a combined solution of an appliance, what we tend to do is, again, we go in with that, a lot of times that smaller appliance, we can come in at a better price point because we don't need to have as much storage behind it. And we are also going to handle the data in such a way that's a lot more intelligent. It's a lot more advanced from that perspective. And you look at some of the solutions out there, they were, you can look at some of the interfaces and things like that. It changes based on the different data and those kind of things that you're protecting. With us, it's not, right? It's very much streamlined, same user experience, whether or not we're talking different type of workloads, whether or not we're talking on-prem, cloud, those kind of things. So I think what we can bring to the partner is, a much tighter solution, a much easier solution to fit into a customer's budget, and then also expandability and, additional capability to go back into that customer and keep that trust going from that perspective.
So from a support standpoint, what support does Arcserve provide reseller partners in relation to Appliance Series solutions?
So we have a couple of different things, and when we look at this, number one, we do offer services to go with this, because we do want to make sure that our customers are confident on how to use the solution. We'll generally recommend, hey, let's sell some services with this to make sure that we get the product installed correctly. The customer has some knowledge transfer, they understand how to use the product, they know how to do that. So all of that is setting up and that piece of it. But then at the end of the day, what happens is a customer runs into an issue or something and they do need support, they need help doing a restore, or they've been hit and they're panicking about everything, they don't remember how to do disaster recovery on the solution or something like that as well. It's a time of panic usually when that happens, right? So we do offer that follow the sun support model where we can take and we do, we can escalate that to the next available person if it's what we call a category 1, right, issue where servers are down and those kind of things. And then of course the follow the sun where, they can definitely reach somebody, with their issue. It could be on the phone, that could be via chat, something like that as well. And then finally, in some cases, right, we have customers that are maybe they're state and local, or maybe they're federal or something like that, and they require a, 100% US based, the data never leaves the US kind of thing. We do have a premium support that offers that capability as well for those customers that do require that next tier of, and I don't really call it next tier, it's just that guaranteed US based support. So we offer that as well.
Stacy, that's going to cap off today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining me today and for offering your expertise and knowledge. And thank you at home for joining our webinar, Bundle Your Ransomware Defenses with Arcserve. I'm Katie Bavoso. Take care.